The will reading was supposed to be a formality, a sad, quiet closing of a chapter. Instead, it felt like a battlefield. Uncle Robert, the lawyer, cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the hushed room. My mother sat beside me, her manicured hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Then, it happened. As Uncle Robert droned on about bequests, a low, guttural sound escaped my mother. Not a gasp, not a sob. A ragged, furious hiss. Her eyes, usually fixed on Uncle Robert with a practiced air of sorrowful respect, snapped to me. Her face contorted, a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "That's not your name," she spat, the words like shards of glass. The room, which had been thick with the scent of old paper and wilting flowers, suddenly vibrated with her venom. I froze, the neatly typed pages blurring before my eyes. My name. My name was the least of what she seemed to be contesting. My childhood had been a masterclass in navigating her storms. We lived in a large house, impeccably decorated, filled with expensive, untouched things. My father, a quiet man who had loved his books and his garden, had always been the buffer. But after he died, the silence he left behind was filled by her. Every interaction was a performance, a test. She'd compliment my achievements with an edge that implied they were accidental, or worse, borrowed. "Oh, you got that promotion? That's nice. Are you sure you deserved it? Or, your father would have been so proud of you, if only he'd seen it." It wasn't just words, it was the way she'd subtly reframe my memories, painting herself as the long-suffering martyr, me as the oblivious, ungrateful child. I remember once, when I was about 10, I found a dusty box in the attic. Inside were old letters, my father's teenage diaries. He wrote about a childhood sweetheart, a girl named Sarah, before he met my mother. I'd naively asked Mom about her. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. She'd locked the box away, furious that I'd snooped, and then proceeded to tell me, in painstaking detail, how it was for her to even think about my father's past, implying that my curiosity was a personal attack. She'd then spent the next week showering me with expensive gifts, a sort of emotional hush money. This pattern repeated itself, a constant, low-grade hum of manipulation and emotional blackmail. I learned to swallow my words, to retreat into myself, to become adept at reading the subtle shifts in her mood. The house, with its polished surfaces and echoing rooms, became my gilded cage. The reading continued. Uncle Robert, bless his oblivious heart, pressed on. My mother's outburst hung in the air, a foul odor that no amount of floral potpourri could mask. She seemed to have forgotten her outburst almost as quickly as she'd made it, her focus returning to the documents, her fingers now tracing lines on the page as if searching for something. I watched her, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The will itself was straightforward. My father, ever practical, had left everything to my mother for her lifetime, then to me. There were a few small bequests to distant cousins, a donation to the local library. It was the kind of will that spoke of peace, of continuity. It was the kind of will that assumed everyone in the room respected the deceased's wishes, and each other. My mother's accusation about my name, it was so bizarre, so out of left field, yet it felt imbued with a strange sort of urgency. What did it mean? Was this a new attempt to destabilize me, to make me question my very identity? Or was it something else entirely? Uncle Robert reached the final paragraphs. He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the room, lingering on me, then on my mother. "And finally," he said, his voice a little softer now, "there are some specific instructions regarding the management of the estate and the distribution of certain assets upon the passing of Mrs. Eleanor Vance." He paused, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "These instructions are contained in a separate codicil, dated 6 months prior to Mr. Vance's death." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thinner envelope, distinct from the main will. My mother, who had been slumped in her chair, suddenly sat bolt upright. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the envelope. A tremor ran through her. "A codicil," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I wasn't aware of any codicil. Uncle Robert gave her a polite, almost imperceptible nod. Yes, Mrs. Vance. It was signed in my office, with 2 witnesses present. Your husband was very clear about the conditions. He then proceeded to read the codicil. It was dense, legalistic, but the core message was chillingly clear. If at any point the primary beneficiary, my mother, was deemed to be acting in a manner detrimental to the estate, or if she was found to have engaged in, and he scanned the text again, behavior that fundamentally undermines the testator's intent and familial harmony, then control of the estate would immediately revert to the secondary beneficiary, me. There were clauses about frivolous spending, about attempts to alienate key assets without consultation, and even a clause about disruptive and abusive conduct towards the designated heir. My father, in his quiet way, had seen this coming. He must have seen the storm gathering, felt the tremors of her manipulative nature. The reading ended. Uncle Robert, oblivious to the tempest brewing beneath the surface, began to pack his papers. My mother sat frozen, her face pale, her eyes darting between the document and me. The accusation about my name replayed in my mind. It wasn't just a random outburst, it was a desperate, misguided attempt to discredit me before this very moment. If I wasn't who I was, then perhaps I couldn't inherit. It was twisted, but it was so. I stood up slowly, deliberately. The silence in the room was no longer sad, it was charged, pregnant with unspoken accusations and dawning horror. I walked over to the polished mahogany desk where my father used to write. On it sat his favorite pen, a simple fountain pen. I picked it up. It felt warm, familiar. I looked at my mother. Her eyes were wide with panic now, the carefully constructed facade of grief crumbling. She started to stammer, but that's absurd. He wouldn't. He loved me. And my name is Eleanor, that's the name he gave me. What are you talking about? I didn't answer her. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound diary. It was my father's handwriting. I opened it to a page near the back, the ink slightly faded. It was a list. A list of names. And at the very top, in bold, underlined letters, was my name. My name. The one I'd always used. Underneath it, in parentheses, was my mother's given name. The one she'd tried to erase. The one she'd spat out in the will reading, a desperate, nonsensical accusation. I held the diary out to her. She stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes flickered from the diary to my face, and then to Uncle Robert, who was watching the scene with growing concern. The smug entitlement that usually radiated from her was replaced by raw, naked fear. She saw it then. She saw the trap, sprung shut. The will, the codicil, the carefully placed diary, it was all a tapestry woven by my father's foresight and my own quiet endurance. Her face crumpled, a grotesque mask of disbelief and fury. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The battle was over. The days that followed were a symphony of her panic. Texts flooded my phone, frantic, accusatory, then pleading. How could you do this to me? Your father would never have wanted this. You're destroying our family. Her flying monkeys, the distant relatives she'd cultivated over the years, began their sorties. Aunt Carol called, her voice dripping with feigned sympathy, asking if I was sure about all this, if I'd considered Mom's delicate health. My cousin Mark sent a terse email about respecting familial bonds. My mother even attempted a physical confrontation, showing up at my apartment building, only to be politely but firmly turned away by security. She claimed I'd stolen her inheritance, that I'd manipulated my father, that I was a selfish monster. The irony was almost unbearable. Her attempts to control the narrative, to paint me as the villain, were only serving to highlight the truth. The legal documents were ironclad. The codicil, read and verified by Uncle Robert, had effectively stripped her of her control. She was still entitled to use the house, of course, and receive a modest monthly allowance from the estate, but the vast majority of the assets, the investments, the stocks, the actual power, had irrevocably passed to me. She was no longer the matriarch, the queen of her little domain. She was a tenant, dependent on my goodwill. Her social standing, built on a foundation of inherited wealth and a carefully cultivated image of elegance, began to crumble. Invitations stopped arriving. Old acquaintances grew distant. The whispers started, the hushed conversations behind cupped hands. The woman who had lived her life as a predator, always circling, always taking, was suddenly vulnerable. And the silence that followed her fall was profound. There was no victory lap, no triumphant pronouncements. Just a quiet, steady reclaiming of what was mine, what had always been mine, taken and then returned. My father had seen it all, planned for it all. And I, his quiet observer, had simply executed his final, silent wish. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was the vindication of a lifetime spent enduring.